We are live. We are live here at Peek Around the Corner, October 26th. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We're doing a live show called The Elephant in the Room. The Elephant in the Room, which is how does the new college football playoffs expansion, all the revenue that's coming in, how will it get distributed? How will they do it? I don't think they're going to do it like they did here in the current playoff contract. We're going to go into it. You see the numbers here. You see the numbers here on the Take a Peek chalkboard. That's the name. Now that is the official name of our high-end, high technological advanced graphics here. Going old school with our chalkboard we've been using the last few weeks. We're calling it Take a Peek chalkboard. Take a peek chalkboard. I've got numbers here. We're just going to break it down. Those are projections. Don't take the numbers themselves too seriously. But by looking at these numbers, you can see that, my goodness, we have some big decisions. Oh, we don't. We don't here at Peek Around the Corner. And you all don't. But man, the leaders do. The leaders of college football, the commissioners, the expanded college football playoff committee, they have some big decisions to make. And these numbers are going to illustrate it. These numbers exactly will not be accurate of how much revenue the new college football playoffs is going to bring in. And I'll show you why we came to that $2.2 billion number. It was reported. We're going to go through that article. But we're going to go through this. I'm going to wait till people join the chat room. Please let me know if everything looks good, audio and visual. I'm going to do a little monologue here because we got a lot to get through. Then I will take your comments, like always. And you can discuss everything and anything here in college football because that's what we do at Peek Around the Corner. Everything is important at Peek Around the Corner. Just let me get this. Bob Dolan, thanks. Appreciate you coming in, sir. Let me know it looks good. Let me get this passed around here on Twitter. Just give me a moment. Like always, give me a moment. Make sure we got everything. Give people time to come in. The first subject we're going to talk about, though, let me get it up on our board here so I can show it to you. First subject for tonight on October 26th, we are going to be talking about that right there. Ross Dellinger. The biggest issue remains the calendar, which is taking shape. See attached tweet. The bowl contracts and the elephant in the room. Drum roll, please. The revenue distribution model. And we're going to break that down tonight. I should have done this at least once in the last month, but I failed to do so. So my apologies to Peek Around the Corner. You all watching my show daily and weekly. I should have brought this up. I know I did on Twitter about a month ago, or at least late September, but I failed to do so. And come failure comes growth. So we're growing here, but we need to tackle this tonight because it is big news. It is the elephant in the room. And as we break it down, you can see the massive ripple effect on however this is decided, however the new revenue is decided in the new college football expanded playoffs. Man, just the economy of that is going to drive so many future decisions on the compositions of these conferences, how this playoff is played out. First, let me get this going here. I got to do a few things. Let people come into the live chat. Okay, we're just doing some bookkeeping work here. Give me one more minute. And we're going to get right to it. We got a lot to get to tonight. We have a lot to get to tonight. Okay, I think we're good to go. Let's get it going. Peek around the corner. Welcome everybody. Peek around the corner. October 26th, the first big issue we're going to tackle is the elephant in the room. College football, expanded playoffs, the distribution model. How will it work? Because how it works, woo! Opie, nice to see you, sir. Just getting here. Did I miss anything? No, you haven't missed anything. But we're going to get right to it. The chat room is filling up. First item, I'm going to go into our little monologue. Please put your comments down in the comment section below the video. I will get to them. Please smash that like button if you like our content. If you haven't subscribed to our ever-growing channel, please do that right now and share this video with your family and friends. Put it out there right now on your Twitter account, Facebook. We are live here at Peek Around the Corner. If you want to contribute to our show to keep the lights on, just hit the super chat button. Contribute what you like to contribute. We'll get to your comment immediately and dissect it, but we appreciate all of your support. Let's get to it. This tweet by Ross Dellinger comes out today, and it's just smacked me over because, again, if you weren't here at the very start opening of this live show, I haven't talked about this issue in the last month. I'm sort of embarrassed by it because it's a massive issue. Ross Dellinger, first of all, he puts out a tweet. The conference football playoff commissioners held a call this morning to further discuss timing of expansion. Sources tell SI Now, a continuation of their in-person gathering last week in Dallas. Still no decision on expanding the college football playoffs early 2024. Discussions are progressing. More meetings are expected. Then the next tweet from Ross Dellinger, SI. The biggest issues remain the calendar, which is taking shape, see attached tweet, the bowl contracts, and number 3, the elephant in the room, drum roll, the revenue distribution model. And we're going to be focusing on, at the beginning of this live show, the elephant in the room, the revenue distribution model. Now, those other issues, of course, the calendar, right? They're going to have to move up the season to get the expanded playoffs in. For 2024, week 1 is going to have to be week 0. You have conflicts with certain universities and their academic calendar. And then, of course, you have all these bowl contracts, these bowl tie-ins with these conferences and how that's going to work out. But we're going to be focusing on the revenue distribution model. Okay. So, I got these numbers up on the board here. And how did I get those numbers? Well, let's first get into an article. This was 2 months ago, right? The college football playoff expansion, new college football playoff media rights fees could be worth more than $2 billion per year. I'm just going to read a little bit of this article, and then we're going to jump to take a peek chalkboard. Okay? Much of the conversation surrounding the college football playoff expansion is more so based on the average revenue brought in by the media rights each season. Just how much could the next deal bring in for the sport in general? According to Front Office Sports, with the college football playoffs expanding from 4 to 12 teams no later than 2026, remember they're gunning for 2024, the college football playoffs could sign media rights deals worth multiple TV partners that would bring in an annual revenue over $2 billion. The college football playoffs current exclusive deal with ESPN pays about $470 million per year. So currently, as we sit, there's $470 million per year that gets distributed to the 10 FBS conferences and the Notre Dame. And roughly speaking, currently, 80% of that $470 million gets distributed to the 5 Power 5 conferences: ACC, SEC, Pac-12, Big 12, Big 10. And the other 20% of that $470 million per year, roughly, gets distributed to the 5 G5 conferences. Okay? So among the Power 5 conferences, it's about $75 million per year, roughly, in this current media deal that gets put out to the Power 5 conferences. And it gets sent equally. It doesn't matter if you're SEC or the ACC. You're getting $75 million. Now, there are bonuses in that. I think you get about $6 million conference if a team makes the semifinal. Like $4 million if you get to a Bowl 6, New York 6 bowl game. So there's other little bonuses in that. But roughly, the payout is even the $75 million to each Power 5 conference. I'm just going to end this article. With the expansion being finalized in the coming years, it's reported that the expanded playoff could bring closer to $2.2 million. Bob Thompson, according to Bob Thompson, the former president of Fox Sports Network, we often just talk about his tweets. He's an incredible, valuable asset to all of us as he discusses this on Twitter. Even $2 billion seems low for how much the new format would bring in on name branding alone. I think it will be north of $2 billion. So $2.2 billion is possible, Thompson said Tuesday. Okay, so that is why we're using, just for discussion, just to kick this around, this is why we're using the $2.2 billion figure a year. New revenue, right? New revenue from the expanded college football playoffs. So we're going to use that $2.2 billion. We don't know if that's going to be accurate. We don't know if it could be $2.5 billion a year. It could be $1.5 billion a year. But we're going to use the $2.2 billion a year, okay? Now, look at this board here. Let's say 80% of that revenue, the $2.2 billion, continues to flow to the Power 5 conferences. And let's say 20% of that roughly flows to the G5 conferences. Now, I say roughly because it's not exactly 80-20. There's independent schools in there. There's independent G5 schools that they consider independent. And there's Notre Dame, right? There's Notre Dame. And I have no idea how much they receive in college football revenue right now in their current contract. I wish I did, but I don't know. I tried to find that information. If you have that information, please put it down in the contact in the comments below the video. But let's just say 80% still goes to Power 5. That means yearly $1.76 billion. These numbers are just ridiculous. But $1.76 billion would flow to the 5 P5 conferences. $440 million would flow to the G5 conferences, the 5 of them. You break it down further, and each Power 5 conference would get $352 million, and each G5 conference would get $88 million per year. Now, you can see why these G5 conferences, right, the MAC, the Sun Belt, the Mountain West, the Conference USA, those 5 conferences, you can see $88 million a year for each of those conferences. My goodness, that's a huge payday. That keeps those programs alive. That keeps those all that football. That revenue will help the athletic departments of all those universities. That's why you saw just a gold rush of teams trying to get into the G5. New Mexico State was able to get into it. Sam Houston came from FCS and got into Conference USA. And that's why the ripple effect through all this is just, we could spend all night on this. There's reports, a little bit of steam out there, that North Dakota State possibly might be looking at joining an FBS conference finally, the school that dominates the FCS. Because of this. Enormous amount of revenue possibly coming in. Okay, I will get to your comments. Thanks for joining us, Danielle, my brother from another mother. I promise I will get to your comments. I just have a little bit more to go through. This is what I really want to just dissect here. This is so important. And again, if you weren't here at the start of our live show, we just begun, but shame on me for not bringing this up within the last month. This question of how the college football playoffs distribution model is going to work. Of course, they don't know how it's going to work. This is the elephant in the room. That's why we're calling this show the elephant in the room. But shame on me for not bringing it up. So thank you for joining us at Peek Around the Corner, because we're going to talk about it. It has to be talked about. Let's look at this $352 million for each Power 5 conference. In this scenario, again, we don't know if that $2.2 billion is going to be accurate. We're just pretending the numbers are accurate. But these are the percentage breakdown of currently what the current contract is. So we just forwarded it to potential new revenues going forward. $352 million, you say, per Power 5 conference. Okay, let's say that gets distributed evenly to the Power 5 conferences. That $1.76 billion gets distributed evenly to every Power 5 conference. What does that mean? Because currently that's how it works. Let's say there's no more realignment going into 2024, which I highly doubt. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, there's no more realignment, there's no more expansion. The Pac-12, 10 schools, $352 million. That's $35.2 million per school. That doesn't count if you get a school to make into the playoffs. We don't know what that would be, right? That would be extra, obviously. But we're not going to put that into the scenario right now. That's $35.2 million, bam, to each Pac-12 school. All right? For the Big 12, in 2024, if there's no more other movement, they'll have 12 schools. That's $29.3 million per school. That's $6 million less per school than each Pac-12 school. Interesting. Then let's look at the ACC. 14 schools, right? We're talking about no movements, right? No movement, no realignment, no expansion to 2024 for the sake of this discussion. That would be about $25 million per school, 25 plus. And then look at the SEC and the Big Ten, both with 16 schools. That would be $22 million for each school in that conference. $13 million less than each Pac-12 school. So let me ask you, and I will look for your comments down in the comments section. Do you believe, after looking at that scenario, breaking it all down, that under the new college football expanded playoffs distribution model, that each Power 5 school would be given equal distribution no matter how many schools are within those conferences as it is now? My answer, and a very strong opinion, my answer would be absolutely no. No. SEC did not grab Oklahoma and Texas so they can make $13 million less per school flat out than each Pac-12 school. Big Ten did not bring on UCLA and USC to make that much money less than a small conference. In the current college football playoffs distribution model, it's broken out evenly. But we're only talking about $75 million per conference. When the numbers reach $2.2 billion overall, $1.76 billion going to the Power 5 schools, $352 million going to each conference, those numbers get separated even more. And under the current college football playoffs revenue model, or the whole system, there's advantages to being a larger school. There's advantages to being a smaller school, right? We know those advantages. But with Big Ten and SEC growing like they are, and will continue to do so in the future, they're going to make sure that the bigger conferences get paid more. It's not going to be an even distribution. That is my opinion. We're going to get to your opinion here very shortly. As Bob Dolan says, big dog's going to eat first. Well, they're going to eat more. They're going to eat more. Look, if I'm right, and maybe I'm wrong, but if I'm right, and let's keep digging into this, I think there's Big Ten and SEC is going to make sure that there was an incentive for them to expand beyond the added value of Oklahoma and Texas, beyond the added value of adding UCLA and USC. There's an added value to bringing these schools into your conference, to making your conference bigger. I believe that's going to be the case. Therefore, the ripple effect of that is, how strong is the incentive for the Pac-12 to grow from 10 to 12, or from the Big 12 to grow from 12 to 14 or 12 to 16? I'm just throwing that out there. I think however this gets decided, however this conference new expanded college football playoffs distribution model gets decided, has a huge effect on what happens next in conference realignment. Is there a built-in incentive, even more than ever before, to grow your conference if you're going to grab more of the distribution, the revenues of the new expanded playoffs? Or is it just going to be a flat fee to each conference, no matter how many schools there is? I don't think that's how it's going to be. But you let me know. I'm going to get to your comments right now. This is the first subject we're hitting. But you can talk about anything in college football. We're going to talk about it here at Peek Around the Corner. But this is something we need to talk about. It's fascinating. And as Ross Dillinger said, we're going to get back to this right here. The biggest issues remain, right? To get the expanded college football playoffs ready to go in 2024 is the calendar, the bowl contracts, and the elephant in the room, drum roll, the revenue distribution model. That is a mammoth, huge issue to overcome. Because I got a sneaking suspicion that Sankey and Warren, with all their chips that they've accumulated, are going to go up to that table and say, look, more eyeballs are on our conferences. When our teams go in the playoffs, there'll be high-rated games, more valuable to our media partners, more valuable to ESPN because they're going to be carrying most of the games. Fox will probably have some, but that's going to go to open bidding. But what have you? They're going to want the bigger piece of the pie. They just are. And the other question is the entire Power 5, are they going to want a bigger piece of the pie? Are they going to take more than 80%? Because, to be honest with you, SEC has so much power in this. They could take their chips and go home. They could create their own galaxy, their own universe, their own playoffs. Everybody knows this. Big Ten is getting to that point. So, do they press the issue? Do they say we want bigger than 80%? Do we want 85%? We shall see. But this is a huge issue, and we're going to be following it here at Peek Around the Corner. I hope you stick with us as we follow this big story. And this is going to be going on here now for the next couple weeks, because they want to get this. They want to get this thing going in 2024, because if they don't, all of them are leaving money at the table. Huge amount of money. And these athletic departments need this money. They need it. There's still a hole in these budgets because of the pandemic. They want this money. So this has got to be decided soon to get it into 2024. All right, let's go to your comments. I apologize for the long monologue. Okay. Bob Dolan. Does Notre Dame get an automatic cut of that? Okay. Daniel says, I don't think Notre Dame should get a cut unless they make the playoff. Let's just hit that right now. Let's go to the Notre Dame question. How does this play out for them? Remember, you got the ACC struggling along here. Are they finally incentivized enough to say, no, Notre Dame's cut in this is going to be very small unless they go to the playoffs? I do think they're going to get a cut. I do think they're going to get somewhat of a cut in revenue. No matter what, no matter how they play out for the season. Just like these all FBS schools will through their conference participation. But again, Notre Dame has a vote. That's the problem. FBS conferences, all 10 of them, Notre Dame has a vote. And it has to be by consensus. It has to be by unanimous vote. To any changes to the college football playoffs beyond 2026 doesn't have to be a unanimous vote. It's just going to be by majority vote, or people are going to take their marbles and go home, like SEC or the Big Ten. But to step into a current contract, to change it all up, it has to be total consensus. Everyone has to get a vote in it. So Notre Dame's going to have to vote yes on it. But you can see the incentives for conferences to say, nah, Notre Dame, you're not going to get much. You're not going to get much because ACC wants Notre Dame to join them. Big Ten wants Notre Dame to join them. But I do think Notre Dame is going to get a cut in the new deal. Again, I think everything is lining up against Notre Dame to continue to be independent in football. I know most of you disagree with me, but these conferences are getting more and more powerful. More and more new revenue streams are coming on board. I just saw a report. I forget what it was. Some league just struck a deal with a sports book, real-time data. And that's what these conferences are going to do here real soon. Anyways, we'll get to more of your questions. Tony, thank you for joining us, Tony. Tony is in the house. North Dakota State, South Dakota State could compete in the Mountain West in football on day one. Other sports may take longer. Tony brings up an interesting point. There's so much incentive. Look at the numbers on the chalkboard. Again, could be off. Might not be $2.2 billion per year for the new revenues, for the new expanded playoffs, but we're using it because it was reported on. I showed you the article earlier. It could probably be totally different. Could be $2.5 billion. It could be $1.7 billion per year. But whatever that is, you see the built-in advantage of becoming an FBS program. To become an FBS program, you have to have a certain amount of scholarships, a certain amount of sports sponsored teams within your athletic department. North Dakota State and South Dakota State already have a good, I don't know what the number is, but they have a bunch of sponsored teams already in the athletic department. They already have some scholarships for their football programs. Some FCS teams do not. North Dakota State and South Dakota State no doubt could compete. They have to be invited first, or I'm sorry, they have to make the phone call first and then get the invitation. I do think there's be some conferences very interested in them. I do think so. I think the MAC would. I think the Mountain West Conference could be interested in them. Again, though, it gets back to the distribution model of the college football playoffs. Will these conferences be incentivized to grow larger depending on the distribution model? Will larger G5 conferences get paid membership-wise, get paid more than the smaller G5 conferences? And of course, the same question about the Power 5 conferences. So much, we've talked about ripple effects, wave effects, realignment waves. How this gets determined will point the direction of how so many decisions will be made throughout all these conferences in the Power 5 and the G5. All right, good question. But yes, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, they would be competitive. Not just in football, basketball, wrestling, some other sports. I know there was some report out there about North Dakota State. I think they're talking about it. We shall see. We're going to hit that. We're going to hit that issue because this thing is looming large. Daniel, it makes me think that the Big Ten and other 5 conferences will want to expand when the playoff expands. Again, it could happen. Maybe the elephant in the room was what caused the pause button to be pushed. Remember, here at Peek Around the Corner, we reported in July that there's going to be this decision window between August 15th and October 15th. A go or no go for launch. Now remember how we described it, because there's some people on Twitter and other places that are missaying what we said at Peek Around the Corner. That happens quite often. We called it a go or no go for launch. We did not call it a go for launch. We called it a go, no go for launch. We called it a decision window because no decision had been made. It was made in October. It's a no-go for now for Big Ten expansion. And this probably could be a major reason why. What's the incentive to growing larger? Would the Big Ten get paid so much more money in revenue to go from 16 to 18 schools that it would help pay for the further expansion? We don't know. The decision hasn't been made yet. It's the elephant in the room. That's why we're calling this live show the elephant in the room. Huge, massive issue. Tony, Pac-12 commissioner today said he has talked to no one from the LA schools that want to join the Big Ten. What do you think of that? I don't know. I guess I would have to see. Send it to me on Twitter, Tony, on exactly. Give me the length or give me the quote on that. Because I checked my Twitter during the live show. I guess what you're saying is the Pac-12 commissioner has not talked to anybody who supports the move to the Big Ten from the LA schools. All right, Tony. Okay, now you've got, we're going to talk about this on the live show tonight, the distribution model. What's it going to look like? What do you think it's going to look like? But let's jump to another story here, another article that I haven't got to because Tony just brought up something that really just gets me going. and I haven't talked about it here at Peek Around the Corner. I have tried to be a gentleman, like always, right? The only person we rip on this show is your host. However, we got to talk about this. I'm sorry, we got to get into this. Because John Canzano, the writer out in Oregon, wrote an article on October 21st. Canzano, Pac-12 not buying what the Big 12 is selling. So I'm going to tie this in to the question that Tony just put out, that the Pac-12 commissioner said today that he hasn't talked to anybody in Los Angeles that supports the move to the Big Ten. I tell you what, what's coming out of the Pacific Coast is quite simply astonishing. It makes no sense. Let's get through this article. John Canzano, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but basically he mocks Brett Yormark for being a salesman, the commissioner of the Big 12. But first, before I hit this article, that's your job as a commissioner of a conference? That's your job, is to sell your conference, to sell it. To sell your conference to your institutions, to your media partners, to sponsorships, to signing deals, to companies always, continuously, to academic departments. You are continually selling your conference. That is what you do as a commissioner. You set a vision, you try to persuade people, you communicate, you sell. To mock Brett Yormark as a salesman, I think is so out of touch, especially in today's world in college athletics. Again, I'll get off the soapbox. I'm going to jump right back on it. Let's get to this article. Brett Yormark graduated college at Indiana University and went work as a ticket seller for the Nets. Then he sold television time to professional sports teams. And after that, he graduated to peddling sponsorships. Peddling sponsorships. Just the mocking of this article. I tell you, he's a salesman. We're back to the article. Yormark helped sell America on NASCAR as a mainstream sport. Then he got into the business of Barbra Streisand concert, Bruce Springsteen, and Billy Joel events, boxing matches, NBA sponsorship. Jay-Z's no dummy. When he needed a cutthroat salesman to head Rock Nation, he hired Yormark. Okay, for me, that's all pluses right there. That's all pluses. That's why Yormark got hired. But for Canzano and many people out in the West Coast, and I'm not talking about the fan base, I'm talking about the people who write for a living for these websites and newspapers, I think they're out of touch. I'm sorry. I have to say it. I have to be honest with you. I think they're out of touch. And I think that's why they ignored my text messages, my direct messages, everything I could to warn them about USC calling the Big Ten. They ignored it because they were completely out of touch. Do you know I sent a question in to John Wilner and he put it in his mailbag in the spring? I gave him a warning and he shut it down right in his mailbag. I should bring that up in one of these episodes. This is just more being out of touch of what is going on. Let's continue. Said one industry insider, Brett is a sales guy through and through. He's out selling. Doesn't matter whether he's in New York, Dallas, or Provo. Like Alec Baldwin's character in Glenn Ross, always be closing. Absolutely right. Always be closing. If you're not closing, you are losing. Okay. That's Yormark, who is now employed as the Big 12 commissioner. His act is one giant sales pitch. His act. No, that's his responsibility to sell. Again, back to the article. Keep that in mind when you hear him float the idea that his conference may be closing in on a media rights deal with ESPN and Fox. Ask yourself, who is he selling today? His bosses, ESPN, Fox, you and me, or the Pac-12 Four Corners University? I will answer that. Yes, he's selling to all of them. Of course he is. He's selling to his bosses, and his bosses are the Big 12 presidents. He's selling to ESPN and Fox. And if reports are accurate, and these reports are not coming from Brett Yormark, They're coming from other writers. Okay? They're coming from SBJ, Sports Business Journal. They're coming from Dennis Dodd. They're closing in possibly on a $400 million per season deal, which would give each Big 12 school $5-6 million more than they make now when it comes to media money for Tier 1 and 2-tier content. My goodness. And of course he's selling to possible Pac-12 Four Corners universities. And that's a good thing. That's not a negative thing. That's a good thing. Okay. I will get to your questions. I apologize. We got to get through this article, though, because I haven't touched it until tonight on our live show. Okay. I'm going to skip a paragraph here. I asked Bob Thompson, back to the article, the retired Fox Sports Network president, to lay it out for us on Friday. What are the advantages if the Big 12 is closing on a media rights deal early? What's the potential impact on the Pac-12? Bob Thompson. If he can get a deal done and jump in front of the Pac-12, he's got something to dangle in front of the corner schools, Thompson said. Whether or not they're interested, he wants to try and find out. Yes, he does, because that is the top of the dominoes. Remember, expansion, realignment, there's a domino effect, and you start at the top. And right now, the top is no longer the Big 10. The top is the Big 12 and the Four Corner schools. And if he can't get any of them interested in, and the deal that he tries to get with Fox and ESPN, I think there's another domino out there that he'll try to get, and that's San Diego State. But you always stop at the top of the domino. The current domino, at the top of it right now, is the Big 12. It's not the Pac-12. It's not the Big 10. It's not the SEC. It's not the ACC in regards to realignment and possible expansion in this time, in this current time. So this is the time for your mark to sell. This is the time for him to push the envelope. Absolutely. And to mock it, my goodness, again, completely out of touch. I'm going to skip a few more paragraphs here, if you don't mind. Okay, here we go. Excuse me. Your Mark's public pitch is dramatically different than the subdued, calculated act of Pac-12 commissioners George Kliavkoff. I've wondered for a while if it's a misfire for Kliavkoff to sit silently when so much is being said about his conference. Others tell me it's just a difference in style, possibly dictated by the Pac-12 presidents and chancellors. I want to read that first sentence again. Your Mark's public pitch is dramatically different than the subdued, calculated act of the Pac-12 commissioners George Kliavkoff. Calculated act. Calculated act, you say. Look, George Kliavkoff is a smart guy, 1,000 times smarter than me, 20,000 times more successful than me. I get it. He's got a tough job, a tough act to follow, a tough cleanup job after Larry Scott. We all know this. But when George Kliavkoff went on and talked to Kazano and Wilner and said that UCLA will make less money joining the Big Ten than they would if they stayed in the Pac-12. He said that. Less money, less revenue. That's not a calculated act. That's not a calculated act. That's a huge misfire. That's Kliavkoff desperately trying to sell his conference and staying together. Desperately trying to tell the Four Corners schools, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah to stay with us as we try to get a digital deal with Amazon or Google or Apple TV to go with ESPN. That's Kliavkoff being a desperate salesman, and I don't blame him a bit, other than the fact he put out something that was so ridiculous. To say that UCLA would make less money join the Big Ten because they're going to drive charter all around the country with every one of their teams, it was completely nonsense. So calculated, Again, I think I'm going to end it there. I think I've said enough. I didn't understand that article. I think it's the wrong approach in discussion about this. Let me get back to your questions, But Tony, when you say Pac-12 commissioner said he has talked to no one from the LA schools that want to join the Big Ten, what do you think of that? Without seeing the link, I can't really say much. Without seeing what he exactly said, I can't say much. But if that's true, my goodness, they didn't see it coming with USC and UCLA. They didn't think the Oregon-Washington talks were serious with the Big Ten. They were. So they're out of touch. They're out of touch. And they better keep an eye on the four corner schools. They better keep an eye on what's going on with those guys. Go to the next question here. OB says, one less conference means more money for everyone else. My question is, how fast does conference realignment start again after the Big 12 gets their TV deal done? Like maybe months at most. Again, if the Big 12 gets that TV deal done with Fox and ESPN in the next couple of weeks, and if they get that $400 million, now that's a bunch of ifs, but if it happens, man, I think that means Yormark got a green light. Got a green light to actually talk to those four corner schools or who's ever called him. Now, maybe those four schools haven't called Yormark yet. Remember that. You bet your bottom dollar San Diego State has. Of course, San Diego State has called Brett Yormark. But realignment starts with the school calling the conference commissioner first. So has any of those four schools called Yormark, the four Pac-12 corner schools? I don't know. I haven't received any intel on it. We haven't discussed it at Peek Around the Corner because we haven't gotten any information. But if they have, that gives Yormark the green light to say, hey, Utah, for example, we're getting this much money. We got pro rata clause in our new media contract. Therefore, we can give you the same amount of money as the 12 current schools. This is what you're getting. Compare that to what you're going to get with the Pac-12. Compare what our better exposure than what you're going to get with the Pac-12. Compare that. Let me know if you're interested in switching some documents back and forth, trading some documents. Let's explore this. If the deal gets done, if the new media deal gets done from the Big 12 with Fox and ESPN, and if any of those four corner schools had called Yormark previously, then the discussion starts. But it's not going to be done in a week or 2 weeks. It's going to take a while. You just don't flip on the switch and have teams join your conference. It doesn't work that way. It seems like it worked real fast with UCLA and USC to the Big Ten, but it did not. Those talks, remember, we reported at Peek Around the Corner March 31st that USC had called the Big Ten. That was March 31st. We didn't even know when they called them. It happened previous to March 31st. And then that's been backed up by reports since the announcement that they're joining the Big Ten. That's been backed up. Even Trev Alberts, Nebraska's athletic director, said, yeah, we kind of knew this was happening because we were working on a certain internal media contract within Nebraska, and we kind of knew UCLA and USC were joining the conference, and that was sometime in March. So since we reported that, it's been backed up. So it takes a while. But man, if we sit here next week at Peek Around the Corner, we're having a live show, an announcement hits that Yormark got a deal done at around $400 million per year with that pro rata clause intact. Brace for impact. Buckle up, because we might be in for another realignment wave in another month or two after that deal gets signed. Okay, let's get on with it. Next question. Daniel, did they pause until they could see how the playoff expansion developed first before offering Oregon and Washington? It could very well be, Daniel. It could very well. This is such a huge amount of money, and how it gets distributed and the percentages altered, either way could affect millions and millions of dollars changing hands between these conferences. It could be part of the reason it was paused. We know it was paused. We were told October 12th. Kevin Warren came out publicly and said it. Inside that decision window, that go or no go for lunch. It was paused. I got a lot of heat from Oregon and Washington fans, but it's paused. It's on pause. This could be one of the big reasons why. We have to wait to see how that plays out. What's interesting about this, what's really interesting about this, it's going to play out real fast, guys. The decisions are going to be made real fast. They're trying to get this done for 2024, which means they got to get going on this. This has got to get completed in the next couple of months. And there's so much incentive to get it done for 2024, to not have this get pushed to 2025, because they're leaving so much money on the table. So we're going to know. We're going to know real quick how this revenue distribution model plays out, if in fact they can get the college football expanded playoffs starting in 2024. That's what's so fascinating about this story. Okay, Tony, Pac-12 basketball media days was today. Said something to that effect. Okay, I'm going to have to take a look at it. Thanks for the information. Ted, Mr. Fighting Illini, thanks for coming in the house. Appreciate it. Not sure why it is so hard for them to understand this. Maryland fans hated leaving the ACC and rivals there, but the money the Big Ten offered has helped them rebuild their unfunded athletics. Well, I think everybody understands that. I'm not sure who you're saying doesn't understand that. I'll go to your next question. Also, the playoff is an interesting Pac-12 debate. Do Oregon and Washington really have an easier path now as the probably one Pac school, or would it be easier to make it as one of the maybe three in the Big Ten? Again, when it comes to realignment, I'm firmly in the belief that Oregon and Washington, that if it's, okay, I'm in the minority on this. I see a lot of comments from really a lot of smart people, including Bob Thompson himself, the former Fox Sports president. He's an alumni of Oregon. A lot of people make this argument that Oregon and Washington should stay where they are because it's easier to make the college football playoffs than the Pac-12. Again, if you want, go back to episode number 1 of Peek Around the Corner. The world has changed. The world has changed. Each of these schools, their presidents, their athletic directors, they need to go for the top dollar and top exposure for their athletic programs. Because if you think there's change happened in the last 2 years, buckle up, because there's going to be more radical change. Don't want to scare you, but it's coming. It's coming like a freight train. And we're talking about these large conferences, and the more powerful ones are going to have more options and bigger results. But change is coming where these conferences become more powerful and they can direct compensation to their student athletes in different ways. And SEC, Big Ten are going to, I'm sorry, but they're going to be able to blow out what Pac-12 is going to be able to do for their student athletes. And that has a trickle-down effect, not a trickle-down, a flowing down, a waterfall coming down effect of what these athletic departments are going to be able to do going forward. So yeah, in theory, in principle, Oregon and Washington will have an easier path, maybe, to get to the college football playoffs, maybe. But the recruiting's going to change. You saw more reports today about NIL and the NCAA restricting certain NIL practices. And if it ain't the NCAA, it's going to be some other governing body that these presidents create. You know, NIL is a factor. It's going to always be a factor in recruiting, but not as big a factor as when these direct deposits start happening from the conference, from the universities, and both going to the student athletes. And the war chest that the Big Ten, the SEC, is going to have over the Pac-12 is going to be immense. And let me say this. And please, if you disagree with me, please put your comments down. I am happy to read disagreement. I will read them. I will read them first and really do a deep dive on them if you hit the super chat button. But please, if you disagree with me, let me know. But Texas and Oklahoma are not regretting their move to the SEC just because it will be more difficult to get to the college football playoffs being a member of the SEC than it is the Big 12. It's just not how people are thinking when these decision makers at these schools. It just... Texas and Oklahoma is not regretting their move to SEC. UCLA and USC is not regretting their move to the Big Ten. No matter what George Kliavkoff, no matter how calculated he is. It's just, they're not regretting the decision. I mean, look, these athletic directors, now I know, look, college football is the most important sport in college sports for the athletic department, for the revenue, for the budget. We all know this. There's nobody at Peek Around the Corner. All you thankfully joining us tonight, all of you know this. But these athletic directors are responsible for all of their sponsored varsity teams. They want that money rolling in so they can build that new lacrosse stadium, so they can extend the volleyball arena, that they can put new seats into the basketball arena. So, and they're getting less money from their boosters. These athletic departments are getting less money from the boosters because of NIL, name, image, and likeness. So these athletic directors want top dollar. When you've got the Big Ten going to be making $75 million per school just in the media revenue, which is going to calculate over $100 million in total conference payouts when the conference, especially when the conference expanded playoffs begin, versus Pac-12 schools that are going to be making what? $30 million maybe in Tier 1, Tier 2. Let's say 35. Let's just go ahead and say 35. 35. So they can make $60 million. Okay, that's a difference of $50 million a year between Big Ten payouts and Pac-12 payouts. $50 million a year. So Purdue, Rutgers, Minnesota, they're all going to be making $300 million more than Oregon is for the next 6 years. At least. We're not talking about all these other new revenue streams that are going to be getting produced, which you're all going to be hearing stories about the next 18 months. That's $300 million. It makes a huge impact on everything. And of course, Oregon and Washington want to get to the Big Ten. They've attempted to do it, and they're going to keep swinging. They're going to keep swinging away at it. We gave you that information, that intel on it, because it is so important for them to do all they can to get above that stratification line. And that is why we said on March 31st and throughout the month of April and May, we gave all the reasons why USC wanted to join the Big Ten. And we got so much grief and heat from so many people, especially out in the West Coast and a few idiots on Twitter. But that's the reality. So this whole thing that Oregon, it's to be easier for them to make the college football playoffs and stay in the Pac-12. Yeah, maybe. For the short term, maybe. But man, that's so low on the list of items that they're looking at when it comes to the pros and cons of realignment, possible realignment, if they can make it happen. All right, next question. Obi, I figure most have already done pre-meetings, already in expansion. Ted, sorry to see your Gophers and the Boilermakers lost. Yeah, and you got a good schedule. Okay, so Ted is bringing up, sorry to see your Gophers and the Boilermakers lost the 2023 Big Ten schedule lottery. The Minnesota Golden Gophers in 2023. I'm not even going to, should I even bring that up? I'm going to bring it up. What the heck? Let's all get depressed here for my Gophers. I'm looking at sympathy here. Where is it? Here it is. This is terrible. Look at the Minnesota Golden Gophers 2023 football schedule. I said it will be fun. It will also be full of losses. Now remember, Gophers are a very senior-laden team. That's why this year is so disappointing. It's gut-wrenching. And next year, man, they're not going to have the horses. It's going to be complete rebuild time. And they walk into a season where they start opening day at home against Nebraska, at Northwestern. Not a problem, right? Then they play Michigan, at Iowa, Michigan State, Illinois, Purdue, Ohio State, Wisconsin. The Gophers crossover games for next year, the very last year of West and East, they play Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State. Wow. And they also play North Carolina on September, I want to say 9th. I could have that wrong. They play Ohio State, at Ohio State, the shoe, a week before they play at home for the Axe against the Badgers. I'm telling you, that is a killer. Las Vegas, win total for the Gophers next year, very well could be 5.5. 5, something like that. They probably will not be favored to get to bowl eligibility next year. So devastating. And I know Purdue got the same type of schedule. Tony, did you see Stanford is giving away free tickets to anyone for the last 2 home games this year? Big Ten needs to stay out of the Bay Area. No support for college football. As we've reported at Peek Around the Corner, Big Ten presidents want Stanford as a Big Ten university. But can they get it done? We said we don't think they can unless Notre Dame's grease the skids for Stanford. So, unless Notre Dame is willing to jump in, Stanford doesn't have much of a shot. Now, Oregon and Washington are the money plays, where there's value in it if they ever could have get enough money to do so. But in California, you know this, Peek Around the Corner, we received no intel, no smoke, no steam, nothing about California being a target for the Big Ten, but it was independently reported by people like Dennis Dodd and Brett McMurphy. So I would say that was true if they're reporting it, but we just never got any steam on California. California, Stanford, that area, great demographics area, right? A whole lot of money, consumer money, big populations, Silicon Valley, great 2 universities. But man, the fan intensity is at the bottom of the barrel, and it's very difficult to see. Let's just put it this way. Those list of targets, Oregon and Washington are definitely the top 2 targets out in the Pacific Coast. There's no question about it. Daniel, is the Big Ten going to have more in-season tournaments to help with travel for UCLA and USC? I think it would actually help all schools. I don't know. That's a question I just don't know. I don't even have an opinion on it. I don't know how they're going to work it. They say they've been working on some plans, right? Some scenarios. Yeah, some little tournaments, right? Where instead of your traditional, let's say basketball, instead of your traditional games where you play like a Wednesday, big Wednesday, and then a Saturday, or big Monday, and then Friday, or that they would have these little tournaments, 4 teams, 1 spot. You play all those teams in that 1 spot in a couple of days. I don't know, man. I don't know. And there's going to be so much complaints, so much drama around the scheduling of the Big Ten. And a peek around the corner, we're going to try to hold back as best I can and not say I told you so, but I told you so. That type of reporting, it's going to be difficult. At times I'm going to keep my mouth shut, but there's no strings attached, Daniel. As you know, there's nothing here. We're completely independent. And I'm going to bring the heat onto the Big Ten because they're going to have issues. You bring up a great question like you always do, Daniel. I don't know the answer. I don't know if they know the answer. They better know the answer. That's all I got to say. Gumpylicious, nice to see you. Appreciate you coming in the house. Can't fault the kids for not showing up to support underperforming teams in locations where there's more than the game, the mall, and Chick-fil-A like in Northern California. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot like Minnesota. You know, we don't have great attendance. Now, we do get over 40,000 consistently, but there's lots to do in Minnesota. A lot of sports teams in Minnesota. My goodness, in fact, for the size of our metro area, for the size of our state, we have more sports teams than anybody else, right? We have it all. We have the soccer, we have the MLS, we have hockey. Hockey is so big in this state. We've got it all here, baseball, football. But there is a level of concern about the fan intensity of Northern California. Would they actually buy the Big Ten Network, for example? Because in Minnesota, they definitely do. Big Ten Network is everywhere, right? So even when there's not a big attendance here in Minnesota or in Chicago for Northwestern or other places in the Big Ten, there's still that eyeballs on the product. There's still that consuming of the Big Ten Network. Everywhere you go, any bar you go to in the state of Minnesota, the Big Ten Network is on. So, watching the hockey, watching these other sports, not just basketball and football. Would that happen in Northern California? Would they buy it? I tell you what, peek around the corner, the money perch, there's extreme doubt that it would be bought in Northern California. The Big Ten Network, the Big Ten product. Would people in Northern California be interested in watching Penn State and Maryland on a Saturday night? So there's a lot of doubts about California. And of course, there's for Stanford. Stanford definitely has the inside track versus California when future targets of the Big Ten. There's no question about that. We did receive steam. We always receive steam on Stanford, but nothing on the University of California. You bring up a good point, Gumbylicious. There's other things to do if you're not performing well. But again, there is concern about Northern California. Daniel says, Greg, you pissed off Kevin Warren for breaking the news on expansion. I think it's personal now. Why did Kevin Warren say something about me? Big Ten kept an eye on us here at Peek Around the Corner. They kept an eye on my Twitter account. If you are new to this channel, you can go to our Twitter account at Flag Umpire, the pin tweet. There was an article in the Los Angeles Times how we broke that news. They are definitely aware of us. We are not going to be invited to any Big Ten media days. And that's fine because we are completely independent. We like where we sit. We're independent. That's why it's so important for you to smash that like button, to subscribe to our channel, to share our video, to donate to our channel if you can, and using Venmo and PayPal. The information is the ticker across the screen, and hit the super chat if you want to contribute to our channel and keep our lights on. This is what we do. We do college football 365 days a year, almost 365 days a year. We're going to be doing live shows all the time, recorded shows. We do almost one episode a day. We have our own intel, our own money perch. It's very accurate. It's not infallible. It's limited, but we get you information. Our information is often verified by other reporters, national reporters. You know them by name. They do communicate to me at times. So a lot of interesting stuff here at Peek Around the Corner. But we are the rebel. Is Kevin Warren, does he know me by name? He knows that we exist. So they know that we exist. We were tracked. Let's just say they know that we exist. The University of Minnesota definitely knows we exist. We've broken stories on the coaching searches, other things going on. But we get our information nationally from their money perch. And that information has only grown. We get more information from the money perch, more than we ever have before. Now we're in a situation where we have to be careful. We have to comb this out. We can't just give out anything that we hear. The West Virginia situation. Let's go to that right now, since you brought it up. Terry Nord is in the house. Terry Aloysius, Simulacious, Connotacious, Sacrilegious Nord. I look at Gopher 23 schedule as an opportunity. Opie says, holy cow, rest in peace. Gophers 2023 football. And Terry says it's an opportunity. Terry is being sarcastic. I know that gentleman. He's been my friend since grade school. He is terrified of that 2023 football schedule. In fact, I would not doubt for one moment that Terry Nord is hiding underneath the covers right now, looking at that schedule. However, let's get to the West Virginia part real quick here. We said about, a month ago, from the West Virginia money perch, right? We said that there were a couple people, money, that want to make sure that if a change gets done in West Virginia, that Hugh Freeze, they want him to be processed. They want him to go through the process. They want him to be evaluated. They want him to be interviewed for the new head football coach of West Virginia. We said that, about a month ago? Since then, there's been other reports picking up on that. Other people reporting that. Okay? We said a couple of days ago on Twitter, there was indications that, again, we received more intel from the same people, Money Perch, West Virginia, saying that there's a movement afoot that Neil Brown may not survive the season, that a change might be made before the season ends. That he might not even get through October, which means that West Virginia loses to TCU this weekend. If they lose, that a change could be made real quick. And these were the same people pushing to make sure that Hugh Freeze gets processed, to make sure that he's a target. Now, Shane Lyons, the athletic director of West Virginia, obviously he's going to be calling the shots. We have no intel that Shane Lyons has Hugh Freeze as the number one target. The intel we gave you all a month ago, and we followed up a couple of days ago, that Shane Lyons definitely will have Hugh Freeze. The Money Perch at West Virginia definitely want Hugh Freeze to be processed. They want him. They want his redemption story. They said this now, or we said this a month ago. These are their words. They want his redemption story to be played out in Morgantown, not in Auburn, Alabama. So, now you're seeing other reports. You're seeing other reports on that. There was some movement afoot. I can't really get into particulars. Let me say how I can say this. In social media, there are clues out there. there are clues out there that there's movement afoot, that West Virginia, people in the West Virginia leadership are keeping track of what gets leaked and what doesn't get leaked. That's about as far as I'm willing to say it. To put my name on this story like I have, that's about as much as I'm going to say. Again, this is coming from the money perch at West Virginia. A couple people. Not from the administration at West Virginia. Not from the athletic department. But from some money people. They believe, their perception is there is movement afoot. Now, and Hugh Freeze is someone they want to get pushed forward in process. The name Hugh Freeze is starting to get reported on by other people in the national college football scene. We had it a month ago. We're going to follow that story. We're going to give the intel as received it. But that's just another example. Peek Around the Corner is an independent YouTube channel. We've broken many stories. We're going to continue to do so. We're not going to be invited to any Big Ten media days or Big 12 media days. We're not going to get invited to any cocktail parties. We're just peek around the corner. We're a bunch of nobodies here, right? All right, let's get back to your questions. Gumbylicious says, I think Northern Californiaites would buy what the Big Ten is selling simply because it's better distributed versus buying what the Pac-12 is selling with its small distribution. That's a good point. Big Ten is the distribution is completely different. Pac-12 made the wrong decision. Larry Scott made the wrong decision. Pac-12 presidents made the wrong decision when they completely owned the Pac-12 network. When it was born, when it was birthed, they didn't have a distribution model. They had nobody to grease the skids to make sure the Pac-12 network would be distributed on networks across California and Pac-12 country. They couldn't get on some cable companies. They wouldn't have it on their cable networks. The Big Ten did a 51-49 split of Big Ten owning the Big Ten network and Fox Sports owning the Big Ten network. Now it's a 61-39 split. Fox Sports owns 61% of the Big Ten network. Big Ten owns 39% of the conference. So the Big Ten network was able to get distribution through Fox Sports. SEC network, of course, got distribution through ESPN family of networks. And so did the ACC network. So Pac-12 made some serious errors at the beginning, and they've paid for it ever since. Would Northern California, would that demographic base, would they consume college football? Would they buy the Big Ten network? That's up for question. Gumbylicious thinks yes. Other people think no. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments section. Tony, LA Times has a good article today on college sports travel. Look at it from the University of Hawaii perspective. I will take a look at it. I appreciate it. Tony, where is Bill O'Brien going to coach next year? If you ask me that on October 26th, which you just did, my answer is University of Nebraska-Lincoln. If I had to guess where he's going to go, that would be the place. Because I think he would take the job, and I think Charles Alberts is very interested in him. I think that's the type of personality that he would go for. A Bill O'Brien type of guy. A builder. A grinder. Right? A guy who's mature. Who won't fall apart during a press conference. That's my answer to that. Okay. I think we're going to wrap it up here. Peek around the corner. October 26th live show. The elephant in the room is conference football playoffs distribution model. What is it going to look like? If it looks like anything like this, $2.2 billion a year, breaking down 80%, 20% between Power 5 and G5. Wow, so much money. And where will it all go? And how does it affect conference realignment going forward? I think it affects it greatly. This is the big elephant in the room. We'll see how it plays out. Stick with us at Peek Around the Corner as we track this story and so many other storylines going through college football. So many big games this weekend. Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio State, and Penn State. Man, those are two big games. We'll see how it plays out. Until next time, from all of us at Peek Around the Corner, to all of you, please, you all take care of each other. Thank you so very much.